see you guys in the dark.
So it was the summer of 2013. I'm 21 and just finished my junior year in college. The second week of August, a group of my friends and I go on an 8-day camping trip. It's 7 of us in total. There's 4 guys and 3 girls. We're camping in a semi-remote campground in the White Mountains of NH. It was a large campground, but very few other campers were there. There were a few filled sites near the front of the campground, but we purposefully requested a site off in the back corner. We were completely by ourselves. During the trip, we planned a white water rafting trip for one of the other days. We were hiking Mount Washington towards the end of the trip, and thought maybe we'd do 1 to 2 other small hikes, with 1 to 2 days of just chilling by the lake at the campground. We also planned on doing plenty of drinking during the evenings. The first couple of days, the trip was fantastic. White water rafting was a blast. Everything is going just great. So it's the evening of our 3rd day. We have a roaring fire going. We're all just hanging out at the campsite drinking and fucking around. It's around 9:30 when a disheveled-looking man walks past our site. His clothes are kind of torn and worn out. Messy, tangled hair. He looks like he's maybe in his mid-40s. This isn't weird, though. We all just think it's another camper doing a late evening stroll around the campground. About an hour and a half later, we see the same man walk past our site in the same direction. This time, he walks a little slower. Almost with a bit of a limp this time. We're all pretty drunk at this point. I think one of us might have yelled something out to him, but he just ignores us and keeps on walking. Mildly strange, but still, it probably just was someone who wanted to take a long walk. We wrap up the night at around 1:30 to 2. The fire is dying down, and we head back to our tents. I usually love sleeping while camping. I usually find it extremely peaceful, but for some reason, I was having trouble sleeping this night. I get up to go pee in the woods, and when I do, I see a faint light maybe about 50 to 75 yards ahead of me in the woods. It looks like a dim flashlight or something familiar. I decide I want to investigate it. I go back to the tent. One of my other buddies is still awake, so I tell him about it. We get up to investigate, and when we do, the light is no longer on. Feeling a little unnerved, I shine my flashlight around the woods a little bit, but don't see anything, so I decide maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me before, and I just head back to bed. Sometime later that night, I wake up to a terrifying scream. It was Sarah, one of the girls that we were camping with. I jump out of my tent as quickly as possible, and nearly run into her as she's running back into our site. She's still screaming, though. She screams that there was a man standing in the middle of the woods. Now our whole party is awake and freaking out. I try to calm Sarah down enough to get her to explain what had actually happened. She says she went to pee in the woods and saw the man from earlier just standing about 15 feet from her, not moving, like a statue. We're all freaking out, yelling, screaming, making a giant commotion. I'm internally freaking out too, but try to calm everyone down enough so that we can actually go do something. We obviously decide to get the fuck out of there. We frantically take down our tents, basically just ripping the poles out and throwing everything back into our cars. Then we speed out of there. It's around 4 a.m. We're in 2 separate cars and decide to just drive away from the campsite and try to clear our heads. Eventually, around 5:30, we find a small diner that's open and decide to head in for some breakfast. We all have different theories about what the hell just happened. Some of us think we just ran into a homeless guy who was camping out in the woods and was surprised by us. Some of the girls think maybe he was purposely stalking us. Either way, obviously none of us are comfortable staying at that campground again. I head back to the front desk of the campground with the 2 other guys. We explain what happened, and the guys at the front desk actually seemed to believe us, but said there was definitely no other campers currently that fit the description of the guy. They were insanely nice about it, though, and actually refunded most of the remainder of our stay, which astonished me. As a group, we decided that fuck it, we weren't letting one freaky guy ruin our trip. We go and find another campground that's a good ways away to stay in. Fast forward about 2 days. We're hiking Mount Washington. We get up real early and get the mountain at around 7:30 to start hiking up. We're a little over halfway up the mountain and we see the very same guy hiking down. Though this time he looks much better. His hair isn't crazy. His hiking clothes are relatively clean this time. We're all just frozen. A few of us let out a surprised scream. He just strolls past us with this massive grin. Luckily, there are enough hikers nearby that nothing could really happen. We decide to continue hiking up anyways, since he is headed to the opposite direction, and hope we just never encounter him again. We did finish the hike, and luckily didn't see him. After that, we decided to cut the trip a couple days short. Looking back on it, we've all come to the conclusion we were likely being stalked in some way. If it was just some homeless guy in the woods near the campground, what the hell is he doing hiking down Mount Washington a couple days later? It was pretty unnerving and a bizarre incident for sure. This isn't something that has happened to me, but something that happened to my best friend. This really was only a few weeks ago. Here's a little background. My best friend walks her dog all the time on the trail. It's trail and public park. It's popular and a lot of people go there. She pulled into the parking lot and got her dog out of the car without an issue. As she was walking over to the trail, she noticed a man standing a little back into the woods staring at her. He was standing right by the entrance of the trail. She said he was a man in his mid-20s. She told me she thought he had a dog, and the dog was going to the bathroom. As she got closer, she realized he didn't have a dog. She was maybe 10 to 15 feet away from him, and he still was staring at her. He didn't say one thing to her. She felt uneasy and booked it back to her car. He followed her back to her car. She quickly got in and locked the doors. He started banging on her window. She couldn't make out much of what he had said. She drove off and called the police. The police asked her if she spoke to the man, and didn't seem to take it very seriously at first. They finally said they would send somebody out to look. It scared the hell out of her, though. She went to a different trail to walk her dog. She hasn't seen him since, thank God. I hope he was caught, because he could stalk another girl. Whoever this creepy guy was, I hope you never meet my best friend ever again. So, a few months ago, I was out hiking with my friend. We live in the mountains of western MD, and we were about 6 miles into an 8-mile loop we have done frequently when we decided to take some pictures and eat a snack at a summit. This area of the trail had a park, benches and tables, and a parking lot. We were sitting and talking when I noticed a man just walking around the parking lot alone. He was walking aimlessly and staring at his feet. What confused me was that he was in jeans and a button-down shirt, not exactly hiking attire. We decided to set off on the last 2 miles of a leg of loop. This part goes downhill to the quarters of the park and is cut out of the mountain bank. The end of that leg is the parking lot where our car is. We don't have a lot of visibility from the trail, and you have to walk single file. I was walking in front and talking to my friend. I turned to look at her, and I see the same man right behind her, following at a rudely close distance. I immediately got a gut-wrenching feeling. I noticed that he didn't have any pack or hiking gear and was not even wearing boots. Something about his eyes really spooked me. So a bit more walking, and he continues to follow very close. I say to my friend that I have to tie my shoe, and as a reason to step off the trail and let him pass us, in case he only follows closely because he wants to go faster than us. She immediately catches on to what I am doing, and we pull over. He looks startled, and she says hello politely. He just stares. This is when I notice that he is carrying a stick. As I'm fiddling with my shoe, she stands between us, and he passes. We wait to give him some distance ahead of us, but he immediately slows her down. We wait for a bit longer, and he gets to the furthest part of the trail that has sight lines to us, and he turns around, looking up at us. We decided that something feels too wrong about this guy, and we don't want to have him pass us again. So we turn around and walk back up the trail towards the park with the tables and parking lot. A few minutes of walking up the trail, I look back and see him walking up the trail too. He's definitely following us. I tell my friend to walk faster. We book it up the trail and get to the parking lot area where we were at before. We start to strategize and wait. Decided that we will wait to see if he comes back up the trail to the lot. There are more people around here, so we felt safer waiting it out. About 20 minutes go by, and nothing. We were talking about how that could mean that he kept going on the trail and is long gone, or is waiting on the trail where it is more deserted. We see a couple come up from the trail we were in, presumably taking a loop in the opposite direction that we are. We approach them and ask if they saw someone on the trail between this lot and the next. They tell us they saw a young man sitting on a rock about halfway down. They describe the man who was following us. We explain our interaction with him to the wife and get into a conversation back and forth about whether or not he was a threat. The husband finally interjects and says that we need to call a ranger. He wasn't just sitting there. He had a knife and was carving that stick. Needless to say, we called a ranger. The nice couple walked that last leg with us to make sure that we got to our car safely, and then even gave us their numbers just in case we needed anything. The rangers then walked the trail, but there was no sight of the man. I wish I knew where he went and what happened to him, but I'm glad to know that my instincts are legitimate. So creepy knife-carrying man in the woods, let's not meet ever again. This story is quite short, but it really traumatized me so much when I was a child, and I actually succeeded to forget about it for a very long time. I've been reading the Reddit for some weeks now, and my memories got brought back into me for some reason after reading some of the stories here. It's not as scary, terrifying, or creepy than some other stories on here, but for a 13-year-old who's never seen any violence, and always lived in the comfort of a happy family life among friends, it was terrifying on its own level. So for context, I was around 13, maybe 12. I don't quite remember the date. I've always been a big childish person, partly because of a car accident when I entered medium school that I felt like it stopped my growth mentally. I barely had any friends because I was going through the weird looks, bullying, and the only one that were okay to hang out with me were people who were younger or with the same mindset as me. Every year, my parents would send me to summer camp Lost in the Mountains, where they were basically mountain activities like hiking, exploring forests, all that stuff. I live in France, and I don't know how summer camps elsewhere work, but here it basically works from the age classifications. There were 3 groups: the blue one, which were the younger, the yellow one, which are the semi-older ones, and then the green ones, which are the much older people. I was supposed to go in the yellow group because I was still too young, but for some reason, I got brought up to the green group composed of people that were 16 or even 17 years old. Basically, everyone hated me for being so young and childish. Let's not hide it. The day that I remember was one of the last days. The instructor that was there was keeping an eye on us and brought us to the deepest spot of the woods to have a picnic. And after that, they looked at us and asked if we wanted to play hide and seek. Everyone was probably too old for that, but they still set up the things, to which most refused to even hide. I was a kid, of course. I was overexcited, and when they started counting, I ran as fast as I could to a place super fast so that they couldn't find me. There was a smallish river. I jumped over it, and after some steps, I feel a hand catching my hairs very violently. I try to turn myself, but the hand just slips to my neck and catch it really tight against his side. I was terrified, and I tried to fight back and to resist, but the hand that was restraining me was one of a grown man with lots of strength. I started screaming at the top of my lungs. I never screamed that loud in my life, but seemingly nobody even heard me. And the guy started talking while dragging me to the forest. He was completely mad and kept repeating, "You'll see. I'll hurt you so freaking much you will cry and scream even more." I remember him talking about harming me, raping me. I was just 13. I was so freaking terrified. I've never lived any physical abuse. No hit, nothing that was even more than words. He dragged me further into the forest, and I kept screaming, hitting him until at some point I found a way to bite his hand with all the strength of my jaw. He screamed back from the pain and just went like, "You're fucking crazy." It's when he got hurt enough that his arm retracted. I escaped and turned back and made the sprint of my life. I think the guy lost interest in me or something, because he didn't run after me at all. I jumped back over the river and found there one of my only friends in the whole camp. I kept running though, and I'm still not sure if she saw the thing that happened or if she even ignored it. I went to the monitors, but I felt too terrified to do anything or even tell them what happened, so I didn't. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know if it was someone from the camp or a total stranger. I didn't even see his hand, his skin, the clothes he was wearing, nothing. I was just so scared. The same night I called my parents, but they couldn't come to bring me back right away. I had to go back home in the bus like everyone else. What terrified me the most was that the guy could be one of the people in the same group as me. He could have just hit me in my sleep and dragged me somewhere. I still don't know who the guy is, and I never wanted to know more. So, to the stranger in the forest who tried to rape a 13-year-old girl, let's not meet ever again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.